Hello, and welcome to the Strange Scaffold Cool Things Club. You're probably wondering what the Cool Things Club is all about. Well, let me tell you. Each month, members of the team, myself, Zalavir, Candice, and going forward, we're going to have guests from people that develop the games here at Strange Scaffold. We'll meet up and we'll share a cool thing, something that we really enjoy, something that means a lot to us, something that's just cool. And we'll share it with each other and share it with you. This month, it's the core team, as I say. It's myself, Zalavir, and Candice, our studio producer. But I will let us introduce ourselves. Enjoy the show. There is I want to know who the person is that doesn't know who Zalavir is and is listening to the very first episode of this podcast. Because you are in such a astronomically surprising group of people that have gone into this knowing nothing at all about this podcast. They're just like, yes, this is for me. I would please get in contact with us. But
right in.
For that person, Zalavir, would you like to introduce yourself and just let us know who you are and what you do here at Strange Scaffold?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Zalavir Nelson Jr. I'm the head of the studio. That means I wear a bunch of different hats at Strange Scaffold, from creative director to writer to voice actor to guy who is frantically trying to help fix things at 4 a.m. in systems that I haven't really worked in. So if you aren't familiar with my wider career, I've worked on I think I'm coming up on a little over 100 games in my game dev career. I started as a journalist, and the thing that I crave, that I yearn for, that I try to make happen every day is to make games better, faster, cheaper, and healthier than the industry assumes is possible.
Nice. I started as a journalist as well. Weird.
Sure did.
Anyway, Candice, welcome. Hello. Would you like to introduce yourself to all the wonderful people listening?
Should I just lie and say that I also started as a journalist? I think that would be fun.
I thought you was going to say, should I lie and say I'm also the head of the studio and I do all the... We all have exactly the same introduction and job description.
Yeah, we just copy whatever Zalavir said. Yeah. Hi, I'm Candice Hudert. I am the studio producer, and I don't have a good pitch for what my job is. I touch all of the games. I poke them a bunch. No, but I've
saying you touch all the games?
Look, hush. Hush you. I have lead produced El Paso Elsewhere, Clickholding, and Life Eater, and Secret Unannounced Project. Kind of announced project, but not really. And now that I am lead producer, I come in and I assist any lead producer on any game that needs or wants my help, to basically be like, cool, okay, so the studio calendar is doing this. All right, yeah, we hired this person 6 projects ago. Let's bring them on for this. Zalavir, go take a break. This is my job.
I was going to say, it feels like you... We mentioned this actually because we had a failed attempt at recording this before, and it was brought up that it turns out everyone pings Candice with any ideas they might have before talking to Zalavir, just to be like, is this a bad idea? Do you think this is a bad idea? And then Candice was like, yes or no. And everyone does. I did that completely independently of anyone ever telling me that was a thing that existed.
Everybody does.
One thing we talked about a lot when we promoted Candice to studio producer is the idea of desire paths. And it's like, if everyone's already going to Candice, we should just officially enshrine Candice as person what you can talk to.
Yeah, that was a lot of the conversation. And when I'm not at Strange Scaffold, sometimes I'm making games, but more often I'm making theater. Usually as a director, sometimes a sound designer, sometimes a technician, sometimes a writer, actor, etc., etc.
Nice. Yeah, speaking of, we'll get into our picks in a second. But
yeah, we will.
I'm Chris Slight, and I'm the social content lead, and I have done lots of stuff talking about video games and interviewing people about video games, and then getting into community management about video games, and it's just been a lot of endeavoring to do something about video games for my entire life. That has been, as much as I've tried, that has been where I have landed, is talking or doing something about video games. So I feel very lucky. If you see a rubbish video, it might have been me, or it could have been someone else on the team.
If you see a really stylish video, that was Chris.
Probably Sid.
That was Chris. Or maybe Sid, but usually Chris.
Or Christa, but yeah. Anyway, we're going to get into the show itself. So, as I mentioned at the top, we're going to be talking about things that we feel people don't talk about enough and that we absolutely love. So, I'm going to run down what we're going to talk about, and then we're going to get into it. I am going to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, because people do talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, but I feel like it's after Star Trek The Next Generation, or after Star Trek The Original Series of Captain Kirk. Deep Space Nine, and we're going to talk about that. Zalavir, I believe you're going to be talking about Asura's Wrath.
I sure am. I'm going to talk about Asura's Wrath with such an energy and enthusiasm. I'm going to try not to make it hard for you to later edit this podcast by clipping through the noise gate, because I love Asura's Wrath.
I'm clipping everywhere.
And Candice, you're going to be talking about, and I don't even know what this is, although I might have an inkling now I've started thinking about it. Teeth, the musical.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Watch out.
Like, Teeth, the music. Watch out, it'll bite. But yeah. Anyway, so I want to start off, Zalavir. I actually, in my heart, I'm now like, I want to know what Teeth the musical is, but we're gonna save that one. That's gonna be our closer. Zalavir. Let's talk about, I believe, Xbox 360 era Asura's Wrath.
Sure is. So, to lay out my gate into experiencing Asura's Wrath, I have heard for years that Asura's Wrath is a game you can play, but especially at launch, they talked about it was filled with QTEs, barely interactive, not super worth playing. Also, the ending was DLC. That was the narrative constructed around this game. And so I, being someone who feels very strongly about experiencing media of all types all the time to keep my creative tank topped up, go, you know what? I'm going to play Asura's Wrath at some point. I think at the time it was like $2 on backwards compatibility on Xbox. I was like, I'm not going to lose much, and also I'm going to buy the DLC. Knowing what Asura's Wrath is going to help make Strange Scaffold games better one way or another. And what I experience
You can just say you were curious.
Why say it when you can explain it? This is in audio form.
I was curious, but also, what if I defined all of my life through the perspective of work? Wouldn't that be healthier and better?
This is also part of my job, is yelling at Oliver whenever he does this.
Speaking about it, I think that's how I became a lead, was beginning with like, I feel like you're doing a lot of work. Like, you maybe don't need to. Wow.
So with the mission that Strange Scaffold games will only become good if I play Asura's Wrath, I come and play Asura's Wrath, and what I discover is a gosh damn paradigm shift for what a character action game can be and express. So the typical way we think about this genre of, man, what hits things is you go into a room, you fight all the dudes, and then it opens up the door to the next room, and you fight all the dudes until you fight a dude with a health bar. And then in between, there's cutscenes of varying splendor and length. We know it from Bayonetta. We know it from the work of dozens of developers over the years who have done very, very good things, but it is a formula, and it is one that is fairly set in stone given its solidity. We know what it means to fight all the mans until there's no mans left. Open the door, there's more mans. You fight those guys.
There they are. Get them. Yeah.
Time for hitting.
What Asura's Wrath does, because people who do appreciate it talk about it, particularly in terms of its cinematic ambitions. In the first level, I think, a man larger than the planet Earth uses a finger to punch you through the crust of the earth out to the other side, grab you again, and keep fighting you. This is the scale at which Asura's Wrath tends to operate. It evokes a hell yeah. And the thing is, while that is true that it operates at a wild scale, for one point, a different guy takes a sword. You are fighting on the moon. He hits you into the air, kicks you into Earth's atmosphere, you land on the ground, and he is coming in from space with a sword. It goes into your body, and he's just burning up on entry, driving this sword into your body with increasing intensity. You're mashing buttons. He's theoretically mashing buttons, and by the time he hits you, I don't remember if that's the point at which your character has broken off the sword with his teeth. You've leaned down and broken off the sword with his teeth and managed to punch him in the jaw as he's landed from re-entry, causing a shockwave. But, like, that's Asura's Wrath. And it is true that is scale and spectacle and that it is glorious to even consider. But the reason why I would advocate that you don't just look up a video of hell yeah moments from Asura's Wrath is because from a gameplay perspective, what it means to experientially play this game genuinely, in my mind, presented a different idea for what character action games could evolve into. But because the games industry only looks at like the top 5 best-selling games in a year and says this is what a genre is, we just never followed up on that course again. We went into making games like, say, God of War and Elden Ring. And the great thing about those games is that they're great. But the downside of them is that because they have to fit all of your game verbs and mechanics into a system, Kratos must have an axe. He throws it, he recalls it, he hits with it. That means all of your actions are structured by what can fit onto a controller, what can fit into your inventory, because Galaxy Brain moment number 1 for Asura's Wrath is that it says gameplay is and can be defined by a QTE. If it's not just punching a guy, if it is something more complex than that, you can have a variety of spectacle moments, which you typically don't get in any other game because you're just hitting buttons that are dynamically presented across the screen. A bunch of B buttons pop up. You press B a bunch of times. You understand that organically, and it's because you're punching someone or something really, really hard until it explodes. That's good. But from there, extrapolating that point, the way Asura's Wrath, and the thing that made it click for me, because at first I was like, this is a fairly basic beat 'em up with a lot of spectacle. It looks cool, though. I want to play more. What made it click for me in my head was, and what made I started to get higher scores, is I stopped trying to fight all the guys in a room, and I realized what I was actually trying to do is there's a bar. You have your health bar at the top of the screen. It is very, very long. It spans the entire screen. Below that is a little bar that fills up whenever you get hit and whenever you hit something. When it fills all the way up, a giant prompt appears at the top of the screen that you can hit at any time that just says burst. And when you hit burst, cool shit happens. I don't know if we're cursing on this podcast. I'll reserve
we are now. Let's do it.
Now. It's the internet. Let's do what we want.
I'll go for T for teen. Cool stuff happens. Someone, and that stuff isn't just you doing something. Sometimes it is someone doing something to you. A major cinematic shift occurs for combat, and suddenly you're fighting on the side of a skyscraper. That in the afterlife, because you've been teleported, you've been hit so hard you go into the afterlife, and you're so angry you keep fighting that person in the afterlife. That's wrong.
I would.
You've been angry enough at the concept of theater.
I could do that. I'd do
Isn't
that.
it Andrew Lloyd Webber who you wanted to like fist fight in the afterlife?
I do remember that coming up in a meeting. I'm not sure how, but it did.
I'm not about it. We'll come back. That's a different week.
Okay. But Galaxy Brain number 1, if it's a QTE, then it doesn't have to fit into the combat system, which means you can do a much wider degree of things and present a much wider degree of perspectives in combat. Second one, from a gameplay perspective, is, very simply, combat is presented as the engine through which you get to accelerate a narrative. Every single time you punch someone, you are accelerating the pace of the thing. You don't even have to fight all the dudes in a room. You just have to get angry enough that you make things happen again. And the idea
Babe, I can do that without dudes in a room. I'll do that by myself.
legitimately, this does happen at one point. It's just Asura in a hot tub with another dude making himself angry/horny enough that he starts fighting that dude naked.
Is that like just a chill moment in the game, and then it's just like, oh, now I'm getting angry.
I remembered that time I got parked in 3 weeks ago.
I'm gonna lose it.
But that flexible construction, because again, it presents your health bar at the top of the screen. It has the same exact imagery, and what you realize is you are building up essentially narrative momentum in every scene, and that means that every chapter of the game, because it has a very dramatic, it shows the credits over a moment more than most games ever do, to the point it becomes hilarious. Like, I'm not talking like at the end of an act of it's just something cool enough has happened that it just starts showing credits while you continue to do stuff.
Amazing. They're just like, this could be the ending. It's so good.
It's got another 5 hours of game. So Asura's Wrath, playing that and realizing that it's been called out for its cinematic spectacle, but actually from a gameplay perspective, it says combat can be the engine through which narrative escalation happens, and you can restructure a player's brain to see a game through that perspective and get them not to fight the man's better, but to get to the hell yeah moments quicker. That's what player mastery looks like, is you learn the controls well enough to get through to hell yeah, to make the hell yeahs happen faster. Hell yeah happens faster. Hell yeah happens faster. Now you're in a different guy's shoes. I got to the part of a game where you're in a different dude, and he's much more calm, but his version of hell yeah is distinct. You're hitting the same buttons, but it all flows well together because the context you come to realize as a player, if you're looking for what the game is doing rather than what you think it should do, is to hit a moment in which your character can rise above their current limits. And I believe it was a giant holographic projection of the collective prayers and souls to God, dedicated to God, coming together to shoot a laser beam towards Asura, who was transformed into a demon of fire into the earth. So they've channeled, I think it was 20 billion souls, all dedicated to God, and a giant holographic matrix man, naked, larger than a planet, shooting from his head. You get your hell yeah moment with this character is you kick that man into the face. You send yourself through space to kick that man in the face, sending the beam cutting across the earth.
Where are we?
Asura's Wrath answers the question of where are we with, wouldn't you like to know? Hit the B button. Hit the X button. And if it's not exciting yet, it will be in 2 minutes or less. And that adrenaline-fueled singular focus and that expansion means that I think Asura's Wrath, while it's become known as a cult classic, I don't think has been fully appreciated in terms of what it does for action game design and what it presented there. And it's a path that, as much as it seems the games industry, again, decided QTE is bad. That was the era of QTE is bad. And so they were just like, this game must be bad then. I pray that someone picks up that ball again, because there is nothing quite like having your actions contextualized not as I am good at game, I hit buttons good, but the world I'm in is so expansive and exciting, I can't wait to shout hell yeah and wonder what's going to happen at my screen again, which QTEs specifically enable and were used in their combat system to define. It's such an exciting way of looking at games.
It's like narrative QTE spectacle. That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. With an action game layer.
Like, as a person that grew up thinking Shenmue was amazing. Like, QTEs were great for me. Like, you'd get really cool moments with QTEs. So, like, yeah, I agree. It was an odd time where everyone was just like, we hate QTEs now. I guess they were in a lot of things, but...
And they were used in a boring way. But when
Yeah.
an exciting way used it, the way games discourse tends to talk about things is, this thing did it in a bad way, so when I see it in any other place, it means the game is bad.
Check out Asura's Wrath, I think is the conclusion of that. Like, that sounds
yeah.
amazing. Like that I did realize I didn't know much about Asura's Wrath going into this. I remember seeing the box and like that's all I knew about Asura's Wrath. And it's like, yeah, there's a world in there. Like, and you can blow it up. You can push a dude through it.
I knew that Zolliver had recommended it to me, and that was like the end of my knowledge of it.
Yeah.
I would love for an indie visual novel team to one day, because like you could use, if you think of it as a narrative escalation engine, you could use Mob Psycho 100 actually does I'm realizing a very similar thing in the terms of the manga of whenever it uses a cutaway moment to show how close Mob is to exploding. The explicit depiction of narrative escalation is coming means that you as an audience get invested into it. I'd love to see a visual novel person figure out, like, what does that escalation look like? I'm blinking at you, Candace. I'm looking directly into your eyes.
Yeah, I was
You
going
didn't
to
have to say it. I can see you. I can see you. I can see you looking at me. You wanted QTEs and good lord? Is that what you wanted?
Yes, I want I want more hell yeah moments with these boys.
Let me date the boys at high action. High action
High
dating.
altitude. I want
altitude
to.
dating.
We look into each other's eyes, and sparks set off an electrical fire in the school, which means we have to run. And as we run, we trip. I fall into his arms. That's what good Lord needed.
Amazing. I knew so little about Asura's Wrath, and now I'm excited about the game you're going to produce, Candace, which is a spiritual successor to Asura's Wrath. Like, we all know that now.
Oh my god, I'm just trying to figure out.
Are you now mentally trying to make it work? You know, like, how can
I'm
make this
I'm really
Asura's Wrath
trying.
2?
I'm giving it a good try.
Hey, give it time. We'll be back. Like, we'll catch up on that.
In the meantime, you prepared an entire essay, I think, about Deep Space Nine.
Read your book report.
Do you actually want me to? Because I have written like a page and a half. So we spoke about this before. I'm going to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine because I love it. But I was like, oh, do I definitely have enough to say about Star Trek Deep Space Nine? Then I wrote like a page and a half, like it's 1,000 words on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and then I stopped and was like, yeah, you've got enough to say about Star Trek Deep Space Nine if you get going. So I have it here, and I will read bits of it, but I will also, converse and interact. So,
Wow.
So Star Trek Deep Space Nine was the third series to bear the name Star Trek, and it differs from its contemporary Star Trek The Next Generation in a number of key factors. I'm not going to go like that for the whole thing.
Oh,
I
but it
wish
was
I
so
would.
funny. It was so funny, though. Commit
So,
to
like,
the bit.
Ways where it differs. It isn't set on a spaceship. It's set in a space station. So they don't go anywhere. And this works perfectly with the fact that this series has a long-running storylines. There's 7 seasons of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But from episode number 1, you particularly notice this when you do like I did and go back and rewatch it. It sets stuff up on episode 1 that gets paid off at the end of season 7 and
Nice.
sets up, you see friendships being set up between characters that you look at them and they're like, oh, they don't like each other in the first episode, but you think, having watched this, I know they're going to be best of friends by the time we get to the end. Hooray, I'm seeing what we're going to go through to get to that point. That is a thing that I think the space station set up really well. You're not going to go anywhere. But there are like little one-shot episodes and things like that. Because it's still a 26-episode 1997 Paramount program. So you got a lot of time to fill. So there are episodes that are just about random stuff. But I'm going to read from the essay for this because I think I read it quite well. Deep Space Nine is a Federation outpost jointly run by the United Federation of Planets. Now, do you guys know much about Star Trek?
I don't.
I know a fair amount about Star Trek.
Wonderful. So the United Federation of Planets, which is humans, Vulcans, lots of other different people, and Bajor. Bajor is a planet that the station orbits. The station is called Deep Space Nine that they're on, and that was previously known as Terrak Nor. It was a Cardassian space station. The Cardassians are a race who had occupied Bajor, and they've withdrawn. They were there for 50 years. They used the people of Bajor because they were quite... At the time that they were invaded, they were a relatively primitive race in terms of intergalactic exploration and stuff like that. They were subjugated by the Cardassians, used as slave labor. Their religion was, they were told it was rubbish and that the Cardassians were the people that you should be following. The Cardassians, however, started losing many civil wars and things, so had to withdraw from Bajor. This now leaves the Bajorans alone, in which the United Federation of Planets comes in and offers to be there as caretakers of Terrak Nor, now rebranded as Deep Space Nine, along with the Bajorans, who also have a presence on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, on Deep Space Nine. I'm going to keep saying the whole name every single time. And they're going to run the station together. This then sets up a whole storyline of you have a wormhole off in the distance that opens up unexpectedly after this is all in the first episode. It opens up unexpectedly, which makes this place a very interesting point of the galaxy for everyone around the galaxy. So all the major powers are now very interested in Bajor, including the Cardassians, who want to come back to Bajor, but it's now protected by the Federation because they can get a stable way to another part of the universe where you could trade, you could invade, you could do all sorts of things. The Federation, however, are of course very interested in peace and exploration, or so it would seem. And that's one of the fun things about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, is it gets in some grey areas. And that's one of the big things that none of the Star Treks had really done before. With the diminishing influence of Star Trek's creator, Gene Roddenberry, you now could start exploring some maybe humanity's not the best storylines. Because Gene Roddenberry wanted to create a utopian future for us all to look towards and go, we could aspire to be great, and we could aspire to all get along, and we could aspire to be the best people, which is great, and which was almost revolutionary at the time as a concept when the original 1960s Star Trek came out. But by the 90s, we were all a little more jaded and a little more cool, and maybe America isn't as cool as we thought it was, and America is definitely what the United Federation of Planets are in this instance.
No, I think an overwhelming interstellar power that defines how all other governments work by virtue of its influence and potential military threat has no relation to the United States of America.
Who could say?
That'd be
Who
wild.
could say?
Certainly can't swing how every single other country operates and works, and will destroy them if they don't. I don't get it.
So
no relation.
we have some amazing characters as well, and that is the main thing that really, I think, hooks you into it. We don't have a captain, we have a commander. Benjamin Sisko is a widowed father of one,
so cool,
who's been transferred to Deep Space Nine.
Yep. Benjamin Sisko is a really good name, actually, and I think I need to meet Benjamin Sisko.
So, fun fact about Benjamin Sisko, his wife was killed in a battle that takes place in Star Trek The Next Generation when the Borg tried to invade Earth.
Oh.
The very first episode shows you seeing Captain Jean-Luc Picard as Locutus of Borg on the screen saying, resistance is futile, we're going to kill everyone. In the moment that he has to abandon ship and leave his wife who's trapped under a beam as he's screaming no as they take him away. So when the
Cisco,
Starship
no.
Enterprise arrives as an envoy and he has to talk to Captain Picard, who was assimilated by the Borg and through no fault of his own, really, was made the face of the people that killed him, Benjamin Sisko's not a fan of Captain Picard, even though he knows
He's like, I don't know. He's got some
be.
bad vibes. I can't really.
I love what you're touching on. So there's two things. The first thing is that like the structure of those seasons, the fact that you have 24 episodes mandatory if you're in a good place, means that they have all this time to breathe that you don't get in a modern TV show. The second one that jumps to mind is just like, and I hadn't really thought of it through this specific term, but like sci-fi, different fictional universes had gotten to the point when we start hitting the 90s that they could start to do self-criticism that may or may not have involved the original creators. So that's where we also saw like Star Wars doing really weird departures and saying, are the Jedi good or not? And extended into the aughts with things like Knights of the Old Republic. The idea that like Deep Space Nine, which I've watched a little bit of, I really want to watch more of it. It represents the moment in which Star Trek was able to really start to self-analyze and build a storyline from that. Probably explains why it's so interesting to me.
It is. It's one of the... So you go for all sorts of things. Like I could list all the characters and tell you why they're all great, but
including why two of them are at least two of them are husbands, right? The internet tells me so.
It's 100%. Garrick, the simple tailor, who is the only Cardassian left on Deep Space Nine, who everyone thinks is a spy, and he constantly, strongly drops hints that he's a spy as to why everyone thinks he is. But then if he's asked, he just runs the little tailor shop on the promenade. So no, he's not. Of course, he's not a spy. But if he was a spy, he would certainly. And he has his friend Dr. Bashir, who are definitely the husbands in this situation, who is just fascinated with Garrick and frustrated, but also fascinated. And he's constantly telling him things. So he's like, well, if I were a spy, what I would do. And it's like, but of course I'm not. Brilliant character,
I love when
Garrick.
we get to plot as flirting.
I know. Oh, it's so good. But yeah, the plot goes on. You've got war, religion, a federation facing the limits of its peaceful exploration against the choices it must make in order to survive. It explores the murky immoral side of what a state does in order to win. It explores the nature of colonialism, terrorism, capitalism, racism, identity, sexuality, and many more lessons that I know for a fact, growing up, watching as a kid, helped shape me into the understanding of the world I have today. And I did write the next line that I believe it is one of the great works with some of the best writing and casting television has ever seen. And it's all there in a 45-minute show about aliens and humans trying to do their best and be their best in a cruel, unfeeling universe. It's brilliant.
45-minute show. How long is the series? How long is the series?
27 episodes, around about 26. There's a lot of Star Trek. If you enjoy it, there's plenty.
How many seasons?
7.
Oh, it's a big boy.
Yeah.
It's a big boy.
Big boy for syndication.
Yeah, when I was rewatching it, I was considering the fact that I watched this all go out once a week on television, and I was like, "This was years of my life." You would sometimes between season breaks, you'd be like, "Oh, I got like 4 or 5 months until I'm going to see anything again. Maybe a year. Who knows?"
So one of the big things about Star Trek and X-Files and procedural shows of the time is that often people will say, here's the episodes you actually need to know, or like start after season 2 because you ain't gonna miss much. Is Deep Space Nine one of those shows, or would you say watch all of it, see those husbands in every episode you possibly can?
I think due to the nature, there are definitely episodes that people will say you can skip, but there's always a little something due to the nature of it being a show that has these long plots that goes all the way through all 7 seasons. There's always little bits. They always put in a little something, like an allusion to something that's going to happen in the future, or just the development of a character in the throwaway episode is always To me, I would just say watch it. I did write down some episodes that I would strongly recommend if people are interested, which is...
You're going to tell us all of this and expect us not to come in and say, yes, tell us the episodes to watch.
Yeah, right.
Aside from all of them, which we
1,
also intend to watch.
Yeah.
Episode 19 is an episode called Duet. And all I've done is taken the IMDb 2-sentence descriptions for these, because I just thought this would have been what was in the TV guide. I don't want to ruin anything, but I'm just going to read those to you. So, a visiting Cardassian, Maritza, may in fact be the notorious war criminal Gal Dahil, butcher of the Galatep labor camp, and Kira Nerys is determined to bring him down. She is a Bajoran who was a freedom fighter for Bajor, who the Cardassians consider terrorists. It's got some of the best acting I've ever seen from Gal Dahil or Maritza.
Heck yeah.
Brilliant. There are moments in that show that like give me goosebumps just remembering them in the back of my head right now. It's so good.
Good shit.
Where like a freedom fighter is confronting a person who potentially ran a terrible prisoner of war camp, and the exchanges they have. And again, they've all got like plastic makeup things on their face, and it's in space, and it's but like all of this is also happening. Brilliant stuff.
I love a prosthetic.
Oh, there's some brilliant prosthetics in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Season 6, episode 19, an episode called In the Pale Moonlight. To save the Federation in a critical scheme, Sisko comes to realize that he must violate its fundamental principles to do so. Another episode that has some amazing moments in it of acting, particularly from Benjamin Sisko, who... the episode is done like he's doing his log to the computer. So you have just him monologuing directly to Canberra, talking about these decisions he has to make. It's brilliant. The House of Quark, season 3, episode 3. Quark is forced to marry a Klingon widow after he takes credit for the accidental death of her husband, the head of a powerful Klingon house. Whenever you see it's going to be a Quark Ferengi episode, you're in for a good time. Let me tell you that.
I've seen Quark. He's the littlest guy. He's the sneakiest little guy.
Sneakiest little guy. Like he's all about profit. The Ferengis are all about profit, and they follow the rules of acquisition. It's so good. I know that like when I'll be like, oh, it's Liquidator Brunt. He's turned up on this episode. He's from the tax office on Ferenginar. Brilliant. This is going to be a great time. Some capers are going to happen. And that's what that episode's all about. It's a great time. The next episode is season 6, episode 19, Far Beyond the Stars. Captain Sisko has a full sensory vision of himself as an underappreciated science fiction magazine writer in 1950s America. This one deals with a lot of deep shit in this episode, and that none of them are wearing their prosthetics in this episode because it's set in the 1950s. And it deals with a black man in America trying to get his stories published and being told he can't, and where that leads to in this thing. It feels like whoever wrote it was just like, I have this story to tell, and it has some amazing acting from Benjamin Sisko, Avery Brooks in there as well. So good. This is what we are talking about when you've got room to make these sorts of episodes in such a long show.
So someone was there's been a recent discussion about the House TV show, because we're in general rediscovering any show that has more than 2 seasons in it, and people being like, hell yeah, there's all sorts of cool stuff in a show like that has a structure that facilitates it. And they were showing I think the meme was someone was just showing an episode of like House where House is fighting zombies, I think with his cane, and they were pointing out the absurdity of it. But one of the quote tweets was, when you have 24 episodes to fill out every season, it became mandatory at a certain point. You just start getting goofy and existential, in the case especially of Deep Space Nine, and like pushing boundaries because you told the basic stories, you told the shape of quote unquote plot, and now you just need to have a musical episode.
Yeah.
You don't get musical episodes very often when you only got 10 episodes.
There's not a full musical episode, but there's definitely a number of episodes that take place in a 1930s swing club where a recurring character is the man that's up there singing like Frank Sinatra.
All right.
Hell yeah, Deep Space Nine.
It's got a game where they play a episode where they play baseball, and that's the episode. It's the Deep Space Niners facing off against a bunch of Vulcans that are visiting.
Sometimes you just play baseball. It's fine.
I will read one quote from that because Worf turns up on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, who you may know from Star Trek The Next Generation. He is a Klingon. He gets really into baseball and at one point shouts, "Death to the opposition," while raising his arm in the air. It has to be told that that's not quite the spirit of the game.
It's like, no.
Brilliant stuff.
No.
And I will leave it there because otherwise I will talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine way too much. And I want to know what Teeth the musical is. I need to know.
Thank you for sharing about Deep Space Nine, though. That was...
Yeah.
I need to go back sooner than later.
So good.
Before we go to
So
Teeth, I've not watched any Star Trek.
You would be fine, I think, watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I'm not going to lie to you. There is some groundings of general concepts that will come to you from having seen Star Trek The Next Generation as to like, if the Romulans turn up, you immediately know what the Romulans are all about. But you will get what the Romulans, they make sure you know everything going into it. Like there's nothing that's really kept secret.
And if you want a super accessible entryway into the universe, one of my favorite shows of all time is Star Trek Lower Decks. It's about all the people who aren't the captains. And even just watching a few episodes of that will introduce you to the wider concepts of the world. And it's also just an amazing animated comedy.
Really good.
The ascendancy of Jack Quaid can be very directly attributed to Star Trek Lower Decks.
Yeah, that's a brilliant show. That's like possibly the best of the new Trek, which is impressive as I really like Discovery. So it was like...
And Strange New Worlds. People love...
Strange New Worlds, brilliant. Yeah, they've been doing great work. There's plenty of new Star Trek for you as well, but Deep Space Nine, that's still the goodness for me. That's still the one that makes me go like, oh, no one's got to this level with Star Trek before, in my opinion.
Heck yeah.
But Teeth the musical, tell me all about it.
Teeth the musical. So... To know what Teeth the musical is, are you familiar with the cult classic film Teeth?
See, I wasn't when you first introduced this to me, but then later I thought, oh, is it the movie Teeth, but a musical?
It is the movie Teeth, but a musical.
Okay.
It is. So for those who don't know what Teeth is,
they're in your mouth.
How the heck do I summarize Teeth? They are in your mouth. Thank you, Zolliver.
But not this time.
Teeth the musical is about an evangelical teen girl who discovers that she has teeth in her vagina. It is about vagina dentata. That is the scare prompt of like this is what we're talking about. But Teeth the musical is just so much fun. It is so much fun. The reason I knew about Teeth the musical is because I absolutely adore the lyricist and book writer Michael R. Jackson. He has also written the musical A Strange Loop, which is a Pulitzer winner, which is fantastic. It is about a fat black gay man writing a musical about a fat black gay man writing a musical about on and on and on and on. It is
amazing.
So good.
Wait, so he went from A Strange Loop and White Girl in Danger to Teeth.
Yes.
Oh, hell.
Yes, he did.
I get it now.
Yes,
I see it now.
I've been telling Oliver about this guy for a while because I love his work. He also did the musical White Girl in Danger, which I think is probably my favorite of his three, just because it is batshit. It is a send-up of, like, every kind of, like, daytime TV drama trope in musical form. Like, to the point where in one song, the main character, who is the only black girl in a town called All White.
Amazing.
She's in the background.
She is in the background. She's a background character, literally. This is the kind of musical this is. And in the course of one song, she becomes president, is pregnant, loses the baby, has a different baby, gets divorced, gets remarried, is impeached as president in one song. It is bonkers. Love this musical.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. It's so very fun. And then I saw that, okay, Michael R. Jackson's next musical, and it's not just him, it is also Anna K. Jacobs, who did book and music, are putting out Teeth the Musical at, it was at Playwrights Horizons, if I'm remembering correctly. But I was like, wait, you mean the vagina one? That one? Is this what we're talking about? And yes, it is what they're talking about. This particular production is directed by Sarah Benson, who is freaking phenomenal. She has this wonderful, like, really impactful directing style of, like, really bringing up characters straight up to you in a really stylized way that really emphasizes the really absurd points while still, like, feeling super grounded. And it is my absolute favorite choreographer, Raja Feather Kelly. There's one song. So Teeth the Musical is about Dawn O'Keefe, and she is a Promise Keeper girl. And she has her little boyfriend, and they're like, wow, oh my gosh. He sings a whole song where modest is hottest. Modest is hottest. And that's his whole thing, is he's just like, wow, you're so modest and you don't draw any attention, and that's so attractive, actually.
Promise keepers, just to confirm, are the people that are like, no sex before marriage.
Yes.
That is our promise.
Yes. That is their whole thing. It is a club of Promise Keeper girls who are all like, my chastity is my virtue. That's their whole thing. And it is very quickly revealed that they're both so horny for each other. They are so horny. They want to have sex so bad. So bad.
They're gonna be chill about it, though, right?
They're so not chill. It's so funny. The reason I go straight to these two, I think his name is Toby. Oh my god! So Toby and Dawn, they sing this song where, in the staging, they are standing like fully across the stage from each other, and they're singing about like, hey, have you ever thought about our wedding night? Please. And just describe their wedding night to each other from across the stage. And literally they are so horny. They are so bothered at each other, but they don't get any closer. They actually, literally, she ends up like kind of collapsing down onto the ground, and he's just like ascending on the other side of the stage, just like staring into the sky of just like, yeah, and I'd kiss your boob. Yeah.
just one.
Just one. Yeah. They don't know what they're doing. They're just horny. But she's like collapsed onto the ground, and she's literally like army crawling away from him because of how horny she is. And she's like, God, I can't be. It is a really fascinating, like, interrogation of, like, what does desire mean in a context where you are not allowed to have any? Like, you cannot have any desire. It is a sin to desire in this way. In this particular super evangelical, very, very tight community. And so basically they get to the point where he's like, hey, what if we just got married? Hey, what if we just got married, like, right now? And, like, performs, quote unquote, the ceremony. They're, like, at a lake. And I mean, minor content warning. If you don't know where this is going, I think you should have a little bit of warning.
Back. Yeah, to the premise.
This is what the plot is. He forces himself on her, and she's like, this hurts. This isn't good. And he's like, but we're married. I love you so much, wife. I love you. And she, with her vagina, bites his dick off. And he dies. And he dies. And it is... I love this production so much because... And I can talk about it in present tense because it just got remounted at New World Stages and permanent residence. Yeah. It is permanent residence.
Cool. So it did well enough that it gets to have a permanent home.
It's yes, it gets to have a permanent home, and you can go see it now in New York City. It exists now, which is so exciting, and not something that's so happens for so many shows. So I'm so excited for them. But this production is so much fun because it realizes that, like, yeah, this isn't fun. This isn't a fun topic, but the emotions contained in it are so huge, and that is something that, like, the musical format does so well, of just being like, I mean, there's the common saying of, like, people in a musical start singing when words aren't enough, and that's, like, everything in what's happening here. I haven't even talked about, like, the subplot of her stepbrother, or, like, not even quite stepbrother, because her parents have died, and she's been, like, adopted by the pastor, and the pastor has a son who he's like, you're gross and sinful, and I don't like you. And the son is extremely jealous of Dawn, because Dawn is, like, the Promise Keeper girl, the best. She's in charge of the Promise Keeper girl. She is the goal, and is very, very loved by the very creepy priest. Take that how you will. And, like, it's such a good, it is a romp. This musical is a romp, and it knows that it's a romp. So every piece of, like, staging and everything, the end of that scene with her and Toby in the lake, in this particular production, they had a platform that would lower and raise for different purposes, and they'd reuse it a lot. It was really smart, compact staging. It's not a huge stage they were on. So it would lower, and so you can basically just see, like, shoulders up of both of the characters. And so when Toby gets bit, he goes, oh, God, and he, like, fist into the sky his own penis.
Amazing.
He's like, God! And then blackout. Like, that is the level
amazing.
Of, like, huge nonsense emotion that's, like, a real emotion of, like, yeah, you would have a big emotion about that.
You would, yeah. That would be a surprise for everyone.
But I think it was so phenomenally acted, because I think about the main actor in particular, and of course I am blanking on her name right now. She is fantastic. She is a big Broadway veteran. She's been doing this a minute. She, like, was practically vibrating, like, with emotion whenever she needed to have this big emotion. I went and saw it with a friend, and they were like, she had, like forehead veins in the way that, like, a middle school or high school gym teacher has forehead veins, like, yelling at the team. Like, it was incredible, the amount of, like, wow, you can do that.
That's intensity.
The soundtrack is now out, and I think it's on YouTube even, so you can, like, listen to it and just listen to, like, the way that, like, this world gets exploded, kind of, in just, like, these characters are having real emotions about, like, a fantastical world, because we have vagina dentata. This is a thing that we have and that is real. And I was so enchanted by this production. I would love to see the remount at New World Stages, honestly, because it is one thing with Raja Feather Kelly in particular, and one of the reasons I love his choreography so much, is he is really focused on making choreography that, like, is from that particular performer's body. So it comes from however this person moves, rather than being a thing that they are performing. So it feels really, like, grounded and embodied and, like, true to that specific actor or performer in anything I've ever seen it in. It doesn't matter as much if it is, like, exactly the exact same movement. It matters that it is, like, really grounded within that person's performance. And that, I think, is so exciting. And I think it really works for this, because each character, they don't have a ton of time. Like, there's a whole chorus Promise Keeper girls. Like, there's a whole chorus of them, and they don't like have individual songs where they get to like do specific things about their backstories, but you still get a sense of like their character and everything, because every part of their blocking, every part of their acting choices, every part of their choreography is so characterful. I think it's a really wonderful production. But yeah, Teeth the Musical is a romp, and not a thing that I think most people would expect to see on a stage.
Yeah.
They have 3 different dick props. Like, you're not expecting this.
I also adore just like this treatment of desire in a religious context, because there's a very honest story there that gets passed over for cynicism. Being a Christian military kid who bounced between a lot of those communities, I can say from experience, and I think maybe even people in this room have experienced this too, like, when you have desire, which is a human thing, in a room where no desire is allowed, what happens is people get really weird. People get weird about it. They get weird about each other. They end up in way weirder and more dangerous circumstances than they would if there was a more open conversation had, which is what I was thankful for my parents and how we did have those conversations, unlike, say, the pastor's kids I ran into, who got deep into, again, really weird, really self-destructive patterns coming from intense desire in a room where it's not allowed. So using this absurd context and 3 different penis props to tell a very honest story seems like it's very in keeping with both the author as well as just like, I'm fascinated by that. I'm really, I feel seen by that, even from the distance of having not seen the musical, by virtue of the fact that that story is getting told at all. That's cool.
Yeah. I think it is a really deeply honest story with absurd circumstances, and that's one of my favorite kinds of storytelling, honestly, is like, just because there's werewolves doesn't mean we can be honest. Like that kind of a story. There are no werewolves in Teeth. That I know of.
Hey. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. You didn't see that bit, but maybe one of them, if you studied that blocking closer, like.
I also to appeal to the gamers. I the
Are they all right?
The fine.
Yeah.
The son character, he finds solace by talking to his like, oh god, I can't remember. They also have a silly name where it's like, yeah, that's a real thing that exists, but it's scary, of like I don't know, it's like the eagle pledge knights kind of thing, like
Eagle
it's one of those
Pledge
where it's,
Knights.
you're like, I'm a little scared, you sound like
Truth seekers.
Thank you.
That is icky. That's even ickier than Eagle Pledge Knights.
Yeah, right. Like I was like, I can't come up with something worse than what it is, but I can get up there. Yeah, he hangs out with the Truth Seekers, and I love how they do it, and I love how economically they do it. So there's only, I think, four male actors in the whole show, because there's the son, there's the pastor, there's the boyfriend, and the gay best friend who's like, I'm not gay, I'm definitely gay, I'm not gay. And so there's only 4 male actors in the show, male characters in the show, I should say. And the way that they do the Truth Seekers is these guys come on and they all have VR headsets. And that's how you know that they're truth seekers, is they're talking to each other in the headset. So that's one other thing that I really love about this, because it works fantastically in a theatrical context and would suck on film, and it modernizes it. Like, there's live streaming in this. This is a movie from, I think, the 90s, so this would not be a thing that existed then. Is like, these guys with their headsets, you're still getting a full range of acting, because it's not fucking TV where you're like so close to the actor you can only see them like move their nose.
Yeah.
Like, you can still see the whole body emoting and everything, and it's look, I love mask work in all forms, and apparently I like VR headset mask work.
It's the future. We're all gonna have to get good at it if Zuckerberg has his way.
Hey.
That sounds amazing, though. Like, I feel like I've barely ever interacted with many musicals, like myself. So, like, just the thing that really interests me when you're describing the way that they're choreographed differently and how you can get so much about a character just from blocking and things like that, like where they're standing and how they're standing, and that sounds really smart. Like, that's you don't. I mean, we mentioned Andrew Lloyd Webber, but I feel like the few musicals I have seen are his, and I feel like I haven't seen that as much. Or at least I've not paid enough attention. I don't know, but like,
hey, look,
I was like,
see what that ensemble's doing. Ensemble actors are undersung heroes. A lot of focus gets put on the stars in theater, but I do really think that the ensemble in a musical in particular really carries the feeling and the focus of whatever story is trying to be told. Because if the ensemble's not on it, then you just kind of lose the focus.
Yeah, Teeth the Musical. You can go and see it in New York.
You can. It's there.
It's there.
And if you can't go see it, go listen to it. It's also very good to just listen to. And like, one thing that I really love about it too is I think I wasn't a huge fan, or not even a huge fan. I didn't know what to make of the ending. And it kind of falls out of the reality a little bit. And I wasn't like, look, I love a giant fight scene. I love when like people are ripping shit off the walls on a theater stage. Like, give it to me. One of my favorite things to see in any show is someone throwing something across the stage. Give it to me. I don't care what it is. I've seen so many different things. If you do it, I'm there.
Just anything. Someone just
literally anything
across the stage. Like,
yes, I'm here. I'm on it. Literally, I am so easy. I'm like, woof, let's go.
Nice.
Fetch. But I find it really encouraging as a storyteller, the ending in particular, because it falls out of the world in a lot of ways, and it doesn't necessarily. I'm trying not to spoil exactly.
I was
going to
say, is this spoilers? Like, should we?
It's kind of spoilers, but I think my summarizing it wouldn't give you the sense that comes from seeing the whole musical anyway.
Got it.
It ends on kind of a note of, it's like, we don't know what's gonna happen next. And like, we're going to make it work, whatever it is, and we're not sure what it is yet. And that is the feeling it ends with, which I think is I think that is an underutilized tool in a lot of modern storytelling.
I think because it's often so poorly done. Like in horror, they struggle with this a lot, and this is something that we even talked about on Clickholding, of like, what about the resolution though? Audience, we're not going to tell you anything, which means the monster's scary. It's like, no, you misunderstood all of the video essays you watched about not showing the monster.
I think it was an effective usage of like, we don't know. It wasn't like we don't know how to end the story. It could definitely be interpreted as such, because how do you end a story about vagina dentata? It's a kind of a... But I appreciated that so much care and attention was put into the story throughout. And who knows? It could have a different ending from when I saw it, because I think it was like first previews of the original production. So that's the fun thing about theater. It could have a different ending now. I don't know.
For those who aren't familiar, because I was amazed by this process when you told me about it, because I thought it was like a film script where it's like a static thing.
Yeah. That's what I would have assumed.
How does a musical change?
So musicals are new songs and scenes, and the order of things can change up until the show is frozen. The show can be frozen deep into having audiences. Audiences can see fully different productions, or not fully different, but different versions of the production, often throughout previews. So if you see a preview on the very first night of previews, and then you see opening night, there's a very high likelihood that you will see a different version of the musical. I had a teacher who was the choreographer on Hadestown, and there were a lot of discussions I found out from him where they were trying to figure out where to put intermission. So they would switch back and forth and see how it worked with the audience, of whether or not it goes after Wait for Me, if you're familiar with the musical, or Build a Wall, of like, where do we put this piece of punctuation? And frankly, I think they picked wrong, but that's just me. Because they switched from the London version to the Broadway version where they put it. They put the Broadway version after Wait for Me, which is a big Orpheus moment where he is singing about, no, I'm gonna come find you, Eurydice, versus Hades singing about, like, why are we important? It's because we build a wall. Why do we build a wall? It's because we're important. He's talking in circles and convincing everyone under him that this is what they need to do. And I think that it is a more powerful ending, and it's what they did in the London version, to have it after that song. Because I think it works on a greater thematic level. But there are times where Broadway performers will get a new song day of and perform it that evening.
Huh.
Wow.
It is a very fluid, reactive process. And yeah, there's a lot of testing to see, like, oh, the audience really didn't like this, actually. We need to either remove that song or put it in a different place, or maybe we'll give it to a different character, actually. It is really, really fluid and reactive and live.
I guess, yeah, because you have that audience, right? Like, right in front of you. Huh.
Mm-hmm.
For those who are interested in learning more about that, I think you were the one who told me about how Sondheim has a book.
Yeah.
For those who aren't familiar, Stephen Sondheim did things like Sweeney Todd. He has a book where he talks about that literal, like, beta testing process, if you want to learn that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. It's like you've got a live service and you're out there just alpha testing, like with friends and family test, like, and it's like, here we go. We're not at 1.0.
Any theatrical production, even on a local scale, if you go to the production and you look at the back row, that's where the production team is. Your designers are back there. Your choreographer is back there. Your director is back there. The stage manager is probably in the booth, but but that is where your production team is. They want to see both how they're doing and how the audience is reacting.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I have, I want to see this musical. There is nothing better than with a piece of art. I find this when you go around a museum or a gallery or something. I can just wander straight through one of those and spend like 2 seconds looking at something and be like, all right, cool. But when you get the little tour guide with you and you get the little, or you get like the audio, like, tour guide, and you're stood there and it's going, do you see that bit in the painting there, the way that person's got their hand in the 1700s, that meant that this person was specifically belonging to this caste of this religion, which is, and you're like, I would have had no idea. So yeah, hearing all of that and then like, oh, I want to see this musical now, I want to see Teeth the musical. Like, it's amazing.
It's very, very good. It is very, very good.
I will check it out. That wraps us up on our things that we want to talk about in this episode. We do have some questions that we won't go through too many of them because I'm aware that we've been taught. I got way too into Deep Space Nine.
So and I got too into Asura's Wrath.
And I got into Teeth. That is the prompt of the show. Yeah, we've done it.
Turns out we all love things. But we do have a question. I got one here that from This Is Star on our Discord, which you can join. The links will be in the show description. It says, what's the next cursed promotional item? I have a small shrine of the ones from most of the past games, and I'm curious how it might grow.
This is the El Paso Elsewhere promotional pill bottle.
These are the cursed items. This is Star Germain, very, very talented game developer. I think these are that's the type of curse item Star is referring to, because last one was tape. We made tape for Life Eater, which was more difficult than expected. You'd think it would be easy to get some printed duct tape, but no.
Printed duct tape?
Yeah, no, it had the key art on it.
So next one is actually interesting because right now we have Secret Game, we have Co-op Kaiju Horror Cooking Game, and we have Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3. Those are the three ongoing. So for all three, I've actually been running into an interesting example of those where the intention wasn't to have a cursed promotional item for each game. It just ended up lining up that way. And for the last few games, including I Am Your Beast, like people were like, what about dog tags? I'm like, but that isn't compelling. That isn't chewy enough. And also, if we want to get a narrative designer around it, Harding wouldn't be holding on to his dog tags.
Nope. I was just thinking that when you said it. I was like, Harding wouldn't have those.
So, yeah, I think for the games we have, unless we end up doing baked goods for people, which immediately, as soon as I say it, my brain goes, no, liability, no.
Yeah, you don't want to give people something they can actually consume. There's an issue there.
And if you're inventive enough, you can consume most things. Kids, listening to this podcast.
Yeah,
tell us in the comments. Don't do that.
You could put it on a small drive. Like you could put it on one of those tiny memory cards, and the podcast could be within you. Don't do it though.
You could, but you shouldn't. But you could.
Yeah. This is the strange scaffold problem. As we all go yes and go like and it just goes.
It would
on
be
forever.
funny though. It would be funny.
It would be funny, but yeah, I think I don't know. The honest answer is I don't know what the next commercial promotional item is. Each of these games is such a weird beast in its own right. I think that the fact that especially Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3 exists at all, it is the miracle. It is the cursed item. The story of the game has actually shifted over time to be about how improbable and how trying the journey was to make the game in the first place and get it funded. So the emotions you take away from the next projects will be our next cursed promotional item.
What if we just get branded cast iron skillets? Have we considered?
Those are cheap. I know that. Like that's the thing about cast iron skillets. They're so cheap and easy to make.
We could do a cookie cutter rolling pin, and it's just the different kaiju.
Ooh, a cookie cutter in the shape of like a kaiju would be very fun. I'm gonna, as we take on the next question, I'm gonna Google actually how expensive that is. So TBD.
Find out.
But a good idea has been
for the
had.
next one. I Pan Your Beast, saying that they've been a big fan of the podcast for nearly a decade now. Thank you very much for listening. And just wanted to ask, what kind of games did you grow up playing? Also, what would be your childhood game? Thanks. Love you all. Great podcast. Thank you for listening for so long. This is an impressive feat that you have managed. I Pan Your Beast. I imagine you have access to all sorts of time streams that you can move yourself through at any point, and I love that. But
and I know you've already given us like 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and gotten our Blue Apron sponsorship, all the...
Oh, you got that straight away. Yeah, it's, I don't know, whatever else it is now. Dollar Shave Club, you're so shaved. Like, it's amazing. Like, you've got so many varieties of razors.
I'm getting a lot of insurance ads on my podcasts lately. I don't know if that's a warning or...
I get a lot of like cloud storage for some reason. I don't know if they started tailoring podcast ads, but it's just like, do you want cloud storage? I'm like, maybe. I don't know, do I? But anyway, they want to know what kind of games did we play growing up? And I would like to start with you, Candace. What kind of games did you play growing up, if any at all?
I got a Game Boy Color when the DS came out because my mom found it at a yard sale.
Yes, you're like me. You're a generation behind. Yes, due to financial circumstances.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, I got, so anything that could be found at a yard sale or thrift store is what I grew up playing. I played a lot of Humongous Entertainment because those CDs showed up at Goodwill like nobody's business. I still have them. The Spy Fox dry cereal. Maybe it's not dry cereal. No, it's Operation Ozone has, if you put it in your CD player and you fast forward past track 1, because that's where the game is, then there's a comedy soundtrack of spy spoof songs.
What?
That are all themed around Spy Fox.
We used to be a country. Gosh damn it, we used to be a country.
I was just thinking that, and I remember putting like a PlayStation game. I tried, when I did first put a PlayStation game in a CD player and it actually had music tracks on it, I would do that with all of them and be so disappointed when it didn't.
Yeah, you gotta try it.
Like, oh, look, the soundtrack.
There's more room on this. There's
and
more
each
room.
noise like the thing makes.
So yeah, lots of Humongous Entertainment, tons of like mobile games, anything you could get on your phone. It's one of the reasons that I played Ghost Trick so early is because they have an iOS port.
Yeah.
And it's a really good iOS port, and that is my favorite game. That is my top favorite game is Ghost Trick.
That makes sense.
Hey.
That was a read. Right.
It was, and I'm going to ask him about it later. But yeah, anything that you could get on your phone especially like adventure games, stuff like that, Flash games, anything you could get for free or cheap is what I grew up on.
Nice. For myself, I was going to say I am the same, a bit older, but the same in that I had a Sega Master System when everyone else had a Mega Drive or an SNES. And I would content myself by insisting that Sonic Chaos looked just as good as Sonic and Knuckles. And I told myself that over and over again to the point where I was an adult and played the game and then was like, oh, it doesn't look as good as that at all. Like, why you were gaslighting yourself because like you're, and like I never even had a 16-bit console at all. I went from the Master System all the way and then just got a PlayStation finally when that had a value pack that I remember coming out that you could get. It's like the PlayStation Value Pack. And I was like, yes, finally, now's my time. But like, yeah, same thing where I would play anything. I remember we had a Commodore Amiga when I was a kid, Amiga 500 when I was very young. And I remember playing Zool and James Pond. And this was of the era where my dad had a friend at work that could get all the games. And my dad would go to work with a little, because these were on actual discs, would go to work with a disc box, a little black disc box. And I knew when I saw him taking that with him to go to work, I was like, oh, he's going to come back from his night shift and he's going to have games. And he'd come back and I'd be like,
thank you, Dad's friend.
Yeah, good old Dad's friend. He was the same person that made it so my PlayStation would play games that he would provide as well, which was... I was so terrified because I just got this PlayStation and my dad was like, if I take it into work, my mate says he can make it so it will play games that he burns on discs. And I'm like, yeah, you sure it's not going to break this thing that I finally got? Like, don't, like, please. Because I know you can't get me another one. Like,
yeah, game companies really underappreciate how much game sharing has instilled a love of video games in their audiences. I think that is
Well, and I remember this was the same dude because Metal Gear Solid was a game that had such an impression on me as a child. Like I remember that being the game that I was like, video games can be this, and it like blew my mind of a story. And because all I knew was you have to play a point and click game if you want really good story and voice acting. But I'm too stupid or whatever's wrong with me. I don't know. I could never figure out point and click games. So there's me printing off game facts like until my dad would notice like, what are you using the printer so much for? And I'm like, I'm just trying to print off the guide. Like, because we don't have phones or second screens or anything. So I have to print it off. That was the only way I could get good voice acting and stories, which are apparently my favorite things. And then Metal Gear Solid had it. And I was going around sneaking and shooting stuff. But my dad's friend was the person that wrote the codec number for Meryl, which he says in the game is on the back of the box. He wrote it on the back of the CD jewel case for me. And I was like, he's played it. What a great guy. Like, because he was like, it's on the back of the box. And I was like, oh, that's why it says this on the... it's just got like 141.15 on the back of the jewel case.
You remember the number.
Oh, I do. I play Metal Gear Solid a lot. But
so sweet.
Yeah. So that was me. Those are my favorites. Xavier, how about yourself?
So there was a really interesting divide when I went from playing games that my dad was interested in because we were a single console household because my dad was a gamer. I could play games when he wasn't playing games, and most of the games he could play or that he got were ones I could also play. I don't think there was any he really got that I couldn't play. My family was like, my mom was really chill. She was like, I'm looking at Halo. It's rated M, but it looks a lot like laser tag. Go shoot some aliens. So
go for
Thanks,
it.
Mom.
Mom was cool. Dad was cool. They both saw games as an art form and as a job that people could do, which made later convincing them to let me pretend to be a teenage games journalist was much easier. So I think as far as early games, we are talking things like Morrowind, Call of Duty. You can't do a double read. You can't do a read back. That isn't fair.
Hey, it's like the clapback is part of the whole culture. Like, it's got to be in there.
But when you're going off of your dad's tastes, and then you start going into your own direction, when you start going from the Morrowinds of the world and the Oblivions and the Red Dead Redemptions into your own territory, that was a really cool exploratory time for me, because it meant that I was really leaning into esoteric things I could get my hands on. I think something we're all sharing is we leaned into the games that we were able to access.
Yeah.
And so one of the most important moments in my life is we had just arrived. My dad had gotten stationed in Italy, and we were in temporary housing, very cramped space, very, very slow internet. And so what I would do is I would use a shady video website because I was in the era of, again, attempting to improve myself, attempting to catch up on media, especially because I didn't have cable or anything like that. I would queue up literally 8 episodes of Mad Men to all start buffering at the same time. And I would have, in a tiny, tiny window, Planescape Torment, which my friend had given me an EXE before we had flown. I was playing Planescape Torment, and I knew that Planescape Torment was getting a grip on me because I stopped listening to Don Draper and I was paying more attention to Planescape Torment. So
Good.
I really identify with, and Planescape Torment is now a game I purchased. I purchased other games from that era, and I really connect with stories of abandonware or thrift store games and those building a love for individual developers as well as a particular series, because I think a lot of people are in that place where Steam family sharing is a great example, unless there is some extenuating circumstances that literally forces us not to use it. I'm going to have our game Steam family sharing enabled, because now, as still someone with limited financial resources, I'm able to play so many games because me and some of my friends are basically in a game share group in the Steam family, adding to it collectively and sharing things with each other. That's how I played Mouthwashing, which is great. And
I've heard it's great.
yeah, that doesn't answer the question of childhood games too much, but if you want to know a lot about me, know that the coolest game I had ever seen advertised was Shadow the Hedgehog when it came out.
Hell
and I
yeah.
played it at the time, and I played it again very recently. And guess what? It still whips.
It rips.
Still
Facts.
awkward to control. But let me tell you, the player fantasy, there has never been a player fantasy more clear than Shadow the Hedgehog with a gun.
Yeah.
That's
he
so
doesn't
good.
care for the humans of this world.
Oh my God.
Or does he?
That was, y'all probably identify with the, you get the one game, you get the like 1 or 2 or Miracles provide 3 games a year. It's pre-owned and it's like magic.
Oh, yeah.
I cashed in all my chips for Shadow the Hedgehog at launch because I was like, this is the best game that anyone has made or will make. And
I did that for
More could I want?
Pokemon
Get past.
Soul Silver with the little pedometer.
Ooh, yeah.
I really wanted the pedometer.
Now, I didn't get past level 2 of Shadow the Hedgehog, but I don't regret it.
That was a killer concept. That's like, what about Sonic the Hedgehog? But this time, he's got a big gun in his hands.
He's black and red.
The coolest colors.
They're the best.
All right, we probably got time for one more question. We're already way over what we wanted
more.
to be. So let's do one more question.
We're experimenting. We're figuring things out.
We're figuring things out. We'll get there. Meister J asks, do you think any of your games, and I'm assuming this is for Zalavir, could tell their story effectively in a different medium?
Nah.
Would you want to see these experiences that way? That's an interesting question that's potentially pertinent. Do you think that, Zalavir?
Do you think that?
Candace, you were doing some giggles over there. Do you would you like to?
That's under
share
an
with the
NDA.
class?
I can't say that.
I make games because I do think that the story and the way in which it's being told is ideal for games. But as I'm making a game, I do quite often see, this could go other places.
This could be cool.
So, El Paso, elsewhere we've already announced, is getting a feature film adaptation with Keith Stanfield and Dee Bonaventura Pictures, which is amazing.
He's such a cool actor. He's so freaking awesome. So skilled.
That's crazy.
He's even cooler in person. I hate to say it, but he's even cooler
That's
in
amazing.
person.
It's amazing.
Perfect.
Oh my god.
Yeah, deeply self-aware and emotionally like open creature. Like when I'm gonna share a story. Actually, I don't think I've shared publicly. When I was at one point, I wrote one of the treatments for the adaptation and was kind of pitching Lakeith on coming in and working with us. And as I was, and they were already like really excited about it, and we were talking, and the day comes of like reckoning of now present. They've seen the game, they're excited about the game, they've enjoyed their talks with you. You have to communicate the story of the game in a way that like you can now embark together on the journey of whatever that adaptation looks like. Mm-hmm. And as I'm reading out that story and delivering the treatment and pitching it, I see Lakeith in the little video window. Like, as I'm describing a scene, he is looking around the room like he's James Savage. I am describing certain moments and I'm seeing his eyes narrow and open, and even him kind of like mirror some of the words that I'm saying under his own breath, as if he is literally embodying the character. And when I saw that, I was like, that's James. That's James, and he gets it, because James, the heart is not just, black badass, which was certainly some of the partners who we talked to, but it was that deep emotional vulnerability, the wound, neo-noir being, I've discussed this several times, but like neo-noir being so close that it hurts. Seeing someone who was so open in that moment to the story and the narrative that they were visually seeing and living it out as I was delivering that pitch is one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me. And it made me entirely convinced that like, oh yeah, this is the guy. This is the guy. I think there's several of our stories that could fit that mold. One of my dream ones, if only to see what it would look like, is clickholding, but only time will tell.
Movie. That could be a good short. Like that could be a really good. That could be a musical.
Clickholding the musical.
Come on.
Would be very, very funny.
That's so cursed.
I mean, it is, but in the same way, like if you'd said Teeth the musical, and you'd go like, come on, but then you think about it, they're like, hang on a minute.
Click faster, click slower.
No.
I'll tell you what I need.
Oh. Miserable.
Thank you for listening to the first episode of the Strange Scaffold Cool Things Club. We would greatly appreciate it if you'd rate and review on wherever you happen to be listening to podcasts, and tell a friend. Let them know that you discovered some cool things. If you have questions for us, head to the Discord. The link is in the description. We also have a newsletter now, which you can sign up to. Just head to any of the places you can find us on the internet, and you'll find a link to sign up to the newsletter. The link's also in the description here. It's been a wild month for Strange Scaffold. Turtles, would you believe? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Who would have thought? Definitely check out the reveal trailer for Tactical Takedown if you haven't seen it already. It was revealed at the PC Gamer Show. For now, though, we will see you next month. I've been Chris Slight. See you soon.